It's just a very brief question, just how the panel sees a bit more about the commemorations that will come along and the rituals that will be involved in 2016. I just wonder, David, in particular, do you see any way that people from a unionist background feel that they can contribute to what goes on in 2016? Republicans have said that they want to participate, or leaders have said they want to participate in everything that goes on by way of commemoration. Do you think that unionists can do that when it comes to Easter 1916 remembrance?
Sorry, go ahead. It's great to get an easy question. I really don't see in the general sense that being the case. I think, from my point of view, the best case scenario we would have is that we all accept and appreciate our individual commemorations, because there will be commemorations, and some of them will be official, but a lot of them will not be establishment commemorations, to use that term. So I think it's very important that we have a maturity about each other's commemorations and what those commemorations mean to each of our communities, and also that we have an understanding of where we all are at the present time. And as a unionist, I feel very strongly that I'm secure in terms of the union. I also feel that we need to explore how different cultural outlooks can be accommodated within the union, and that just doesn't refer to any one other community. It refers to lots of other communities we have now. So I think that we need to look to the future and to see how we can all share in that. As a unionist community, for example, we have a community which is not altogether impressed with the outcome of the Ulster Covenant, because those who signed it in Cavan and Monaghan and Donegal feel they were let down, that the backs of the Eastern Unionists were turned to them, and they would regard themselves as cultural unionists today. They know they're not political unionists and they're not part of the United Kingdom, but they have a cultural unionism in the same sense that there's a cultural nationalism within the Roman Catholic community in Northern Ireland. So I think we have to look to see how we accommodate all of that in the history that has shaped us and in the states that we are in the present time, and hopefully can feel secure enough and mature enough a century on from these events to do that.
Margaret, would you like to say something about how unionists might want to remember 1916, or can we remember it in an inclusive way in 2016?
Well, it's not easy. I think it is what's most likely to happen, I suppose, is that Irish nationalists will fall into a commemoration of the First World War quite easily. Quite a lot of nationalists seem to be quite interested in the Covenant. 16, I think, is difficult because of the talismanic significance that's been attached to it. So as presently publicly understood, that's probably difficult. But, I suppose one doesn't want to keep bandying Roger Casement and his irritated unionist cousins in Antrimorand. But, there are roots in, I think. And I suppose the key point is these meetings, it's interesting. Is it the case that people are just going to keep going to events that celebrate or commemorate what they're interested in? Are people prepared to do both things? So I think, for example, what David did this evening, of going through and looking at that kind of material, is interesting.
Yes, I see Mark here from Dungannon. We had a series of public lectures in Dungannon over recent months, which drew all sections of the community, looking at the two documents, the Covenant and the Proclamation, looking at the whole backlog. And while it seemed difficult at the beginning to attract nationalist audiences to something on the Covenant, that became easier when we talked about the Counter-Covenant, which people like Casement and J.B. Armour and Lord Perry signed, even though there were only 3,000 of them, as against almost 500,000 men and women who signed the essence of the Ulster Covenant. When it comes to 1916, which would be a turn-off, I think, David would has suggested for unionist audiences for a whole range of historical reasons. Once you give a different narrative and you talk about the soldier from Grey Abbey who was killed in the Rising, or the unionist UVF man joining the British Army who observed it from the Gresham Hotel, and you bring in different narratives, then you broaden it out. And I'm due to speak actually in Westbourne Presbyterian Church in May on the UVF man who watched the Rising. So, I mean, you can see that by broadening it out, you can actually have an inclusive approach to our history, because, as has famously been said by Mary McAleese, in Ireland we have a common history, but not a common memory. That's the point.